All right. Welcome to Forward Future Live. Today, November 7th, 2025. Once again, I have my amazing co-host Nick Wentz. Nick, what's going on?
Not a lot. I'm excited to get started on this. We got a
All right.
good guest lineup.
Yes, we do. We are packed. We have four special guests today. So we're going to have Alex Mashrabov, founder and CEO of Higgsfield AI. We have Ben Goodger, head of engineering at OpenAI, specifically to talk about ChatGPT Atlas. We have Joao Mora, founder and CEO of Crew AI, friend of the show, and Jeff Koch, analyst at Semi Analysis. So excited for all four of these guests. But first, Nick, let's talk about a couple news stories from this week. It was kind of a crazy week.
Kind of a crazy week. Yeah, we have probably 4 or 5 stories that we need to hit on today. Alex, can you share the screen, please? That is not pulling up right. There we go. All right, so we have AWS and OpenAI announcing a multi-year strategic partnership, which basically means that OpenAI is buying cloud compute from AWS. And this comes on the heels of what, Matt?
Yeah, so they basically sorted out their partnership with Microsoft. They being Microsoft lost the right of first refusal to infrastructure or inference services, and pretty much the day after they announced an Amazon partnership for compute. I think it would be probably shorter just to list the companies that OpenAI hasn't signed a deal with at this point, and it's like a flurry of deals all in the last few weeks. So yeah, and I think one other interesting thing. Do you remember, Nick, just a few months ago when it was rumored that Sam Altman was trying to close $7 trillion,
Sure
and
do.
everybody thought either that was BS or he was a little bit nuts. And it turns out, no, actually, we're well on our way towards that number, especially in this first year since that rumor happened.
Yeah. And it's hard to imagine that kind of commitment without sufficient revenues, right? And he came out with a tweet actually commenting on this, I think yesterday or the day before. And he said, we expect to end this year above 20 million billion in annualized revenue run rate and to grow hundreds of billions by 2030. And they're currently looking at commitments of 1.4 trillion. Isn't that right?
I think that sounds right. So remember, that's revenue, not profit.
Yeah.
They are still losing money. And in the same week, it was reported that Anthropic is, I believe, like quite profitable or about to be quite profitable at the end of next year. So interesting to see these two companies taking very different approaches.
Right. And if you look at that 1.4 trillion over whatever it is, 8 years, that's a very large number with only 20 billion in annualized revenue. But you're trying to combat a broader argument around lack of revenues versus amount of spending of commitments that they have. And if you can get to hundreds of billions by 2030, I think that picture becomes a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, also, let's not pretend this is the first time tech has kind of taken this approach. Amazon famously lost money for so many years before they like essentially just turned the dial and started cranking out the profits. Many companies have done this. VC-backed subsidies, providing cheap everything. For Uber, it was car rides. For OpenAI, it's inference. And eventually they figure it out. Sometimes they don't, but eventually they figure it out.
So, what's the bull case on Amazon? You know, do they have a path to 5 trillion, 7 trillion in revenues in market cap?
Amazon or
Yeah,
OpenAI?
Amazon.
Meaning what?
Well, I mean, if you look at these cloud deals that they're closing, the rate that AWS is growing, I think their market cap is 2.5 trillion right now.
Mm.
Can you make a case that they double by 2030, maybe even more?
Yeah,
I think
well,
you can just based on their growth rate.
yeah, I mean, just looking at the cloud provide, I don't know. Look, like we're deep in this. We are obviously extremely bullish on artificial intelligence. There's been a lot of talk about AI bubbles, and I understand that we are investing such a tremendous amount in infrastructure build out, but ultimately, The demand is there today. And that's not even talking about what is possible. We're just scratching the surface of the value proposition, the actual use cases. And I can imagine what is going to happen in the future. All of the demand that, or sorry, all of the supply that gets built out today is already spoken for by demand. So I just think even if we do hit a small bubble now, the like long term, it's there. This doesn't
Yeah,
feel like the dot-com era bubble. I think we talked a little bit about that last week.
totally. Market correction, no bubble.
Yeah.
Um, Now let's talk about this backstop comment. You want to take this one?
Yeah, so Sarah Frier, OpenAI CFO, Chief Financial Officer, made a comment earlier this week that went absolutely viral. I wouldn't say backtrack, she just clarified what she meant. She basically said the government should backstop or guarantee AI financing. And of course, when people hear that, they think about the 2008 financial crisis. They think about kind of rescuing the banks after they completely failed. And like she did not mean that. But there needs to be, especially for a technology as important as this, as an infrastructure build out as important as this, there needs to be private public partnership. Because like when you look at what China is doing, China is obviously like just pouring money into infrastructure build out, and we need to be able to compete. And the government and the private sector, we do have a long history of working together to bring incredible technologies to market, to make sure that the funding is there for just absolute moonshots. And I understand why she said this, and I know that's not necessarily the best word, backstop, because it just
Yeah,
reminded people of some
yeah,
scar tissue they may have had.
some negative connotations. Yeah, in her LinkedIn post, she says, I want to clarify my comments earlier today. OpenAI is not seeking government backstop for our infrastructure commitments. I used the word backstop and it muddied the point. As the full clip of my answer shows, I was making the point that American strength and technology will come from building real industrial capacity, which requires the private sector and government playing their part. So maybe a non-story, but it certainly got a lot of attention this week.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Oh, yeah. Well, actually, let's bring this up. This is interesting. So you were just talking about their OpenAI's commitments, and this is I don't know if this is a complete list, but we have 12 commitments here. So they've signed a deal, 500 billion Stargate deal, the $100 billion Nvidia deal, $100 billion AMD deal. The list goes on and on. So you can see how you quickly get to that trillion dollar number.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking about the roundabout revenue. One company investing in another, paying another for chips, paying for compute, building out infrastructure, and I don't know. There like that. It's still a little bit murky to me, but um, everybody's just trying to make the math work.
Yeah. All right. So this one was interesting. I think we have a lot we can talk about here, actually. So Amazon is threatening to sue Perplexity over Comet, their agentic browser, basically making purchases on the Amazon platform. And in this press release, Perplexity is calling out Amazon for bullying tactics, and not focusing on the innovation that is happening here and really the user experience. So yeah, which line do you fall on? I can understand both perspectives. Amazon is trying to protect their revenue, obviously. Perplexity is trying to make sure that their agentic platform is as valuable as possible for their users, and obviously that means making purchases on platforms like Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately to me, it's about user choice. Does the user want to do this thing? Then allow it. It's like as simple as that. If I want to deploy or dispatch an agent to go purchase something on my behalf, why shouldn't I be able to do that? I mean, the ultimate or the argument, I think, from Amazon, not publicly, certainly internally, is, well, we're serving ads. Their agents are browsing on their behalf. Their agents don't count as eyeballs that we can serve ads to. And so they're losing revenue. But again, it's all about user choice.
Yeah. The risks for Amazon here are significant. To your point, that's missing out on ad revenue, one of their highest margin businesses for sure, with the
Yeah.
exception of AWS. But then you also get into other situations where if Amazon's trying to promote their own products, so you're missing out on those sponsored links, that means fewer upsells, fewer cross sells, fewer impulse purchases. And then you also don't get the user data. You're seeing lower engagement on the platform itself, less time on the site, less behavioral data. So I don't know as Amazon how you combat that, but those are significant risks.
Yeah, you are 100% right. We spoke about that with the Bluefish AI founder
Mm-hmm.
a couple weeks ago. We also, since we're having the OpenAI Atlas browser engineering lead on, we should ask him about that later, about the kind of changing nature of the web. We've spoken about this like, great decoupling between humans and the traditional internet and what that might look like. So it's very interesting to see how all of this is going to play out.
Indeed. Uh, what do you think? Should we bring on our first guest?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
All right. So, our first guest, Alex Mashrabov, founder and CEO of Higgsfield. Welcome to the show. Sure. Give us 1 second. We're just making sure that you're loaded up on the show properly. Hold on. Sorry for the technical issue. Give us 1 sec, Alex. I don't know if the viewers can hear you quite yet. Still working on it. Sorry, Alex. Give us 1 second, please. Little technical issue.
Yeah, we have a lot of interesting topics for Alex. You know, his company is building easy to use AI tools for creating video and images. Obviously, this has implications, far-reaching implications from everywhere, from Hollywood to marketing. So it's going to be a good discussion. We'll get him on as soon as possible.
Okay, let's do one more story while we get the issue sorted out here.
Sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is gonna be good. Okay, so Apple to use Google Gemini for the next version of Siri. It's actually a lot deeper than this. First of all, Apple is going to be paying Google a tremendous amount. I think it's $1 billion a year for the rights, the license to use Gemini. Now, what makes it interesting is they're not actually using kind of the off-the-shelf Gemini. They're actually going to be taking it, putting it on their private servers, Apple servers, and serving it themselves. So they get the weights, which it's like fascinating to see.
Yeah. Now this is a there's a couple ways to interpret this. So one, Apple might be signaling here that they are taking the partner first approach to AI, licensing Gemini, and then it can double down, focus on what it does best, you know, devices, distribution, private cloud, all of that stuff. Or this is a temporary solution while they get their AI business under control. Well, what do you think? Do you think this is a stopgap, or do you think this is an indication of where their strategy is heading?
This is probably a stopgap. I think there's no stopping the internal development of their own models. I just think they're so far behind, they have to do something. It's interesting that they went with Google though, right? Because there were a lot of rumors that they were talking to OpenAI, they were talking to Anthropic, but ultimately they went with their longstanding partner, Google. They've had deals with Google for many, many years. Google pays Apple, I think like 20 billion, something like that, like a ridiculous amount per year, to simply show up as the default search engine.
Right.
And yeah, we're still having trouble with bringing you on, Alex. Apologies. We're working on it right now.
Hmm.
Nick, do you use Gemini? Or sorry, do you use Siri?
I've tried my best to use Siri. Um, but no, I'm not a regular user.
All right. Do you want to pull up Higgsfield.ai and we'll play around with it?
That's a great idea. All right, so we have the website open here.
I don't know if you
Now,
could
oh,
zoom
by the
out a little
way,
bit.
what we can talk about, let me actually go back to X. Higgsfield has a competition that I think they just launched the other day. Maybe I missed it.
The tweet with the sword.
Tweet with the sword. There it is. Okay, so video character swap perfected, introducing Higgsfield recast. Click full body replacement with flawless gesture tracking and voice cloning, plus multi-language dubbing and background transformation. I mean, you look at this video and it is impressive. It's just seamless. The minor kind of gestures, flawless.
Nice. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, yeah, this is good.
Family show, family show.
Family show. Yeah, I love this. I
Yeah,
love
that's
this.
incredible.
We're gonna have to ask Alex about this if we can ever get him on.
Would
Uh,
love to ask Alex some questions.
uh, sorry for the issues, guys.
Let's keep running through some stories while we wait.
Yeah, sounds good.
There's probably more to be said here. To your comment earlier, they certainly have this frenemy relationship. Um, I don't know how much value it's actually creating. It seems to be strictly a monetary relationship. Um, so to your point, I do think that this is most likely a stopgap until Apple can figure out its own proprietary models and integrate those into Siri and its devices.
I mean, it's gonna be
Um,
very welcome. I never use Apple Intelligence. Never ever. Not
right.
once.
And you're using an Apple phone now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I switch back and forth between my iPhone 17 Pro Max and I have a Pixel 9, but primarily my main driver right now is the iPhone, and I effectively never use Apple Intelligence. I want to, it's just not useful, and so as soon as it becomes useful, I will use it.
Yeah, I got to say, Siri comes on more often when it's not invited to come on than when I actually invite it to come on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Accidental usage far outpaces
Yeah.
real usage.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a metric for that.
Let's do
Uh,
another story.
all right. Alex, maybe we can try a, a new link, a new Zoom link for all of us. But in the meantime, we have TPUs in space. So Sundar tweeted this, I think it was yesterday. No, it's been a couple days actually. But he says, inspired by our history of moonshots from quantum computing to autonomous driving, Project Suncatcher is exploring how we could one day build scalable machine learning compute systems in space, harnessing more of the sun's power, which emits more power than 100 trillion times humanity's total electrical production. Like any moonshot, it's going to require us to solve a lot of complex engineering challenges. early research shows our trillium generation TPUs, our tensor processing units, purpose built for AI, survived without damage when tested in a particle accelerator to simulate low Earth orbit levels of radiation. So that's interesting. When we were talking about NVIDIA's data centers in space, one of the concerns was the level of radiation and how the chips would hold up in space. So based on these early simulations, it sounds like they're quite durable. I guess proof is in the pudding in this case. But either way, we're moving to space.
Yeah, it feels like just a few weeks ago, this was just like a completely rough idea. It was just, and a lot of, when I first talked about it, a lot of people were like, oh, that's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. And then within the span of just a few weeks, we had multiple companies announcing that they were doing this. And it really started with Jeff Bezos just a few weeks ago saying at a talk he was giving, hey, data centers need to go to space. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's so much physics, so much kind of broader science that need to be solved to make this happen. It's so cool. And I don't know if you saw, but the way that they're actually going to be connecting the different clusters together are with satellites, right? So there's satellites um, kind of positioned very closely together in a cluster form, and they're going to be beaming information at low latency to each other, kind of helping the chips communicate with each other. And they're imagine this. Okay, this bus-sized satellite is flying through space at incredible speeds in like perfect unison with, 100, 1,000 other satellites, and they're just a few hundred meters away. And that's effectively what they're planning.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, Matt, I know you're an expert in thermal dynamics and space, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how
Ask me
does the
anything, buddy.
how
Thanks
does
for putting
the
me on the spot there.
how does the cooling mechanism work on these things?
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me break down the physics for you. Um, no, it's funny because you think of space, you think it's super cold. And I was like, oh, of course. Well, that's gonna help with the heat dissipation, and then everybody pointed out, well, actually, it's like very difficult to actually get the heat off of the chips into space, and there's like a whole bunch of energy required there. And yeah, so that's the extent of which I understand all of this.
Solid, very solid. I'm impressed. All right, Alex, are we at a place to bring on Alex?
Yeah, all
All
right.
right.
We got it working.
Whew.
Okay, let's bring on our guest. Um, we have sorry,
We
Alex
did it.
Mashrabov, founder and CEO of Higgsfield. Please welcome, join up. Yes, we got you.
Alex, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm glad that I was able to connect.
Yes,
Yeah,
us
us
too.
too. All right, let's get right into it. Tell us about Higgsfield. Obviously, we know what it is, but for the folks who are watching, if they don't know what Higgsfield is, what is it?
Um, let me maybe start with a broad statement, right? I mean, our broad statement is simply that most of the videos on social media is going to be AI generated. This is going to have major implication on the social media itself, like on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. But most importantly, it's going to have implication on how businesses and especially small businesses grow. Historically, small businesses had a huge hurdle with how they actually can make content for socials. Look, guys, you know the game better than most of the people in the world. Consistency is important to stay on top of people's minds. Um, some people they do weekly shows, but most often now people have to post daily. You do authentic long form contents, and you're professional storytellers, and you understand AI well, right? In the same time, you can imagine there are hundreds of thousands of businesses throughout the world who don't know how to tell a story about their brands, about their small business, and so on. And synthetic media is a great opportunity to amp up their storytelling on social media and do this on daily basis at the cost 100 times lower compared to traditional methods.
And so, okay.
I'm curious. You say all pixels on social media will one day be generated. Is that the same for pixels everywhere? Do you think that's going to be the same for pixels on our television screens, with the exception of maybe live sports? But when it comes to media, at least, is that going to be the case?
It's a little bit difficult for me to give this to give you this forecast. Clearly, there is some level of slope growing on social media, especially on certain specific social media, right? And I think that and you can see that when you look at a lot of content made recently with Sora, which enables like very effortless text to video, it really propelled a bunch of new content formats. And we can easily see that the diversity of content on social media is going to increase, and most of the videos on socials are going to be AI generated. In the same time, I think when it comes to Hollywood, they will use all the best methods available to give photorealistic quality. And this will sometimes it will involve live action. Sometimes it's gonna involve AI. It's very hard for me to give you a distribution. Although for social media, we know that velocity is critically important. So physical production very often is not even an option.
What are you seeing? I mean, I'm glad you brought up Hollywood. What are you seeing in terms of that evolution right now? We're starting to see some media spots, some commercials by large brands be completely AI generated. And they're good, they're interesting, but I think a lot of it is still just the novelty of it. Do you think that these types of AI generated marketing campaigns are going to be the norm, or is it just that it's novel now? And then also extend that into movies and TV. Like, how do you see those evolving with AI?
This is a great question. We are specifically focused on social media marketing, and I can tell you that most of the videos, most of them, brands still rely mostly on traditional production, especially bigger brands that rely mostly on traditional production. In the meantime, I'm seeing that pretty much every agency in the world uses generative AI for storyboarding. That's why in Higgsfield, if you look like at our maybe history of releases over the last 3 weeks, we released Higgsfield Popcorn, which is a continuation of our own Higgsfield Soul model, and which enables storyboarding creation. So the model, which has this contextual awareness about the character in the video, about the environments, and so on. And I think this is the first model of its kind to do so. Then we enable team plan, so it allows teams to collaborate together, and we are heavily investing to make it a success. And this all enables creative marketing teams to deliver a pitch for their idea very quickly. And we do our best so that Higgsfield becomes a home for those teams, not just for individual creators. And I think we also have seen some usage of Higgsfield AI, especially with camera effects, with visual effects, being used for some maybe for some synth in high budget ads as well, and maybe in some movies too. Although it's difficult for me to really forecast how it's gonna evolve.
Okay, and I'm curious. So as these text to video models continue to get better, they're getting higher quality. They're becoming longer in duration, and then you have products like Higgsfield that are able to kind of stitch together multiple videos, make it really consistent over kind of smaller clips. How do you see the race between the models increasing in duration versus the scaffolding built around them? And where do you like which one do you think is going to be progressing more quickly in the short run, let's say over the next 12 months?
This is a great question, by the way. I think most of the people don't realize that today there are I know at least 10 teams which are creating thousands of videos a month with Higgsfield to A/B test ads, like how characters should look like in the ads, what's the background, what should be the lighting, and so on. And that all can be A/B tested. I think we already see some double-digit % improvements in CPM. I think we are yet to see when these multi-agent systems are actually gonna drive higher sales. Although I think we're extremely close to that. And I can tell you one scary thing. So in the past, AI was not really good. So everyone was just creating these videos with AI avatars promoting their products. Although now the technology got so good, so essentially marketing teams can take any video and repurpose it for their brands. They can keep the same storyline, but they can change background, they can change actor, put their own products. But this enables way higher level of experimentation, which was never possible. And I think this is just, and we see that OpenAI with their recent launch of agents product is clearly a step forward to unlock this vision. And I think there are other agentic platforms like Na10, which can be used as a backend as well. Although primarily those platforms they target developers. Higgsfield targets marketers. Those two types of users, they need completely different UI and UX. And we are actively working with our customers to really enable this absolutely new type of the workflow.
So, Alex, I believe you said you've seen improvements as much as 2x on the CPM front.
Sorry, it's double-digit %, right? It's like 10,
okay.
20% with AI-generated content versus the baseline. Yes.
Still significant and has significant downstream effects to the profitability of a campaign. Do those improvements come from an agency or a company's ability to iterate and experiment, do multivariate testing on video, or is it the video itself that allows for that improvement? Maybe a combination of both.
Absolutely. I think today it's a little bit trial and error process, because Gen AI is astoundingly good in creating AI avatars. And the most popular models by far on Higgsfield platform is Higgsfield Soul model, which is specifically designed to create AI avatars, AI spokesperson for a brands, like absolutely new synthetic spokesperson. And I think that's a major use case on the platform today. In the meantime, AI can do way more than that, and teams which are experimenting very actively can actually see those gains earlier than anyone else. I can tell you more, is like in some space, especially let's say in the space of education technology, in the space of health and fitness, like wellness technology overall, proficiency in Gen AI becomes absolutely mandatory to stay competitive. There is no other way to scale. Because, I mean, all other formats are already well used. And the only way to really get user attention, hook them on social media, is to make content with generative AI.
Interesting. So are you saying that Matt should create a AI avatar?
Look, no, I'm not sure, right? I think you actually produce unique content. I mean, I'm not sure there is more than maybe like two people in the world, two groups in the world in the same category as you are, right? You are on the top. And I think and one of the reasons is you deeply understand the subject you're talking to. While when you think about other smaller businesses, they don't have the same type of skill or maybe experience as you do.
So the depth that Matt can go into on these topics means that it's maybe not as critical for him at this point in time. But there is something to be said about the velocity at which you can produce content with an AI avatar.
Yeah, for sure. For example, you can see at like 20 VC that they take their longer form videos and they do a lot of overlay with AI. So I think this is a different category where you take high valuable long form content and you can really slice it up and make high performing shorts. and I think there are companies like OpenSleep which are doing very well in this category. I think Higgsfield really thrives with synthetic content creation for social media.
Gotcha.
Alex, I want to let me jump in for a second. Nick. I want to ask. So you have Higgsfield Sol, which is your own model. Like, tell us about why you decided to build your own model, how you think about building on top of other platforms' models, and do you foresee Higgsfield always needing to kind of update and evolve and create your own video models?
Ultimately, we strongly believe that there is a unique opportunity, I call it lifetime opportunity, to unlock $1 trillion market of social media advertising. Content creation, like video creation, definitely helps to move the needle a little bit. What's more important is to drive CPM down and then drive CPA down. And once we can show that we help to increase ROI, then it's gonna be completely, then it's 100 times larger market than just a video creation. So I think that the value is actually going to be created on the post-training layer, where companies like Higgsfield should optimize video generation to drive higher sales. It was never possible before because programmatic content creation was never the case. Now it becomes possible.
Okay, but just to clarify, like, I want to know what the economics are of continuing to build your own model, your own internal video model, as compared to using something off the shelf.
This is a great question. So I think, so on the image model side, I think R&D budgets are not crazy high. I think we talk about millions of dollars a year. Although video models, they get way bigger than it used to be. So I think the most successful open source model is WEN 2.2, which is approximately 14 billion parameters. I can guarantee you that all the top research labs, they are now training models. They are concluding to train models of hundreds of billions of parameters. Those models cost hundreds of millions of dollars to train. Video is by far more complex and complicated domain compared to text or compared to coding. And I think it becomes like an arms race. And what's surprising to us is that there are probably 3 companies in the United States who train state-of-the-art foundational model for video. And there are probably 6 companies or 7 companies in China doing that. And this goes back to what Jensen said another day, that, there is probably a very high risk or very high probability that in certain domains, China is getting ahead of the United States.
Got it.
Yeah, the Jensen comments made a lot of headlines the other day. How do you square, by the way, speaking of Jensen's comments, how do you square wanting to sell the best chips in the world to China, but also saying that China's potentially going to be leading the race here soon?
I think this is an interesting question, right? I think a bigger question is, and I think Matthew, you brought it up on X, is should we expect United States government to be involved to support the companies or not? I think we can all be relatively confident that China supports domestic companies to be successful. And I think there is a question if United States should do the same. I think this is a bigger question. And if we think this should be, and if we say that the answer is yes, then probably there is a point to repurpose more chips to make compute power more available in the United States. Matthew, I can give you another data point. I think on that, and Nick, I think this goes back to your question as well. And I think really what I know about the market is that the GPU costs in China is today 20% lower than in the United States. I think this just speaks of maybe this imbalance in the chip markets. I think I cannot speak about foundational model lab needs. I think Higgsfield operates at maybe like thousands of at the scale of thousands of GPUs. where we train our own model, where we run our own models. And at this scale, I can definitely say that it's likely that in China, cost of running models is considerably lower. In the same time, Higgsfield doesn't operate in China, so we have to keep up with American GPU providers
Well
in this
said.
race.
Alex, really appreciate you coming on today. I just have one more question before we let you go. As creating incredible video as a marketing team, as a brand team becomes more and more accessible, what are the most important skill sets or attributes for these teams? You know, Matt and I talk a lot about the importance of taste. Does it come down to taste, or is it more scientific than that?
You're absolutely right. So I think there are going to be these two different categories. One is performance marketing, and the second is like unique content creation. And social media content today is not diverse at all. Let's acknowledge that Hollywood is way more diverse than social media content. And I think we're going to see that Gen AI is going to enable creativity on the social media, which is going to be truly exciting. And still, all the authentic content is still going to thrive on social media. In the same time, there are going to be, and there are already maybe thousands of teams who are just creating these content factories where they produce and A/B test not hundreds but thousands of video variations. And it's not a surprise, because MrBeast has been doing that with thumbnails for many years, where they A/B test the thumbnails. And I can tell you that most top creators on YouTube, they A/B test first 10 seconds of the video to make sure they kind of hook user attention after they click through. And I think this superpower now becomes available to everyone with the help of generative AI.
Well said. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on today. This was great. Where can people find you? Where can people find Higgsfield? Give us the details.
Totally. I think the most popular channel for Higgsfield today is YouTube. You're always welcome to go to YouTube and search for tutorials how to use Higgsfield, how to do consistent videos with Higgsfield. You can personally reach me out on X, Alex Mashrabov on X, and I'm always happy to hear feedback from users.
Thanks for joining today, Alex. Appreciate it. We'll drop all your links in the chat. All right, we are going to take a 2-minute break before bringing on our next guest, and we shall be right back. All right, we're back. Just a
We are
quick bio
back.
break. Sorry about that. Let's talk about one news story before we bring on our next guests.
Yeah, you know what we should talk about actually? Kimmy. Kimmy
Yeah,
K2. Pretty impressive
yeah,
stats so far.
yeah. That kind of came out of nowhere. Can we get a screen share going? Um, So Kimi K2 came out this week. Kimi K2 Thinking specifically, open source thinking agent model, uh, really state of the art, which is incredible for an open weights semi-open source model, like pretty open source. It was, I think, kind of modified standard open source license. And yeah, it is an incredible model. If you can scroll down a little bit, we can see some of the benchmarks. Humanities last exam, 44.9%. Um, Browse comp 60%. I mean, this, it's funny. We kind of bookended this 2025 with the beginning was DeepSeek and we had the DeepSeek moment. And now it seems like maybe we're having the Kimi K2 moment.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, these are impressive scores. We have them out competing OpenAI, Claude on several of these and not others.
Yeah, so I made a video about it. It's going to be coming out later today. My team has been testing it, but um, haven't really dived into it too much yet. I've seen a couple use cases where it has built entire websites in one go. I think what is really impressive is during the chain of thought, it's actually able to do tool calls, which was the realm of frontier models, and now we have Kimi K2, an open source version of that. So I'm very excited to test it, and yeah, it's also if you use OK Computer, it could you basically give it your own its own environment, and it can download, it can run any code it needs to within that environment. So it's quite nice.
256K context window built as a thinking agent. Okay. Alex, are we ready for the next guest or should we do one
We
more
need
story?
one more minute, it seems.
All right. Let's find a good one to talk about here. No, we can cover Logan Kilpatrick, friend of the show. So, just as of yesterday, Logan says introducing the file search tool in the Gemini API, our hosted RAG solution for free storage and free query time embeddings. So, what's interesting is we've actually started using a couple of tools, pseudo kind of RAG tools that allow our team to find information that they're looking for without scrolling through and searching through a wiki or a knowledge base. You can do everything right in Slack, which has actually been pretty cool. So if you need our business address, or if you need a template for something, you can just pull that right from Slack. It's probably a tutorial that we should create actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had this use case that I've tried to build a couple times and just haven't been able to push it across the finish line, which is for my job in particular, where I'm talking about a bunch of different AI topics and I come across articles and tweets all day long, I come across videos. I want to be able to throw those into a central repository and then be able to search over them really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect I'm not unique with that desired use case, right? I really think that's probably a pretty common use case. And like maybe this will allow us to do that. I just haven't found a single tool that can do it really effectively.
Yeah. By the way, quick aside, can we talk about how this floppy disk icon, which is ubiquitous as kind of the save icon, no one younger than probably 21 years old has any idea what this is.
Yeah, it's like a rotary phone,
It's like a rotary phone.
for a call icon. Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Like this is pretty common for storage saving, but like who actually has used this in their life? And yeah, we're probably revealing our age a bit here. I mean, I was very young when floppy disks were used, but I definitely used them.
Were you a cool kid that used a floppy disk as a coaster?
I wasn't, but I'll tell you, like, one of my first experiences quickly with not only the internet, but computers in general. I was in elementary school and we had Jim Carrey, like, audio quotes from Ace Ventura that we would trade on floppy disks. And we thought it was the coolest thing ever. Just like 2 3 second clips, audio clips. And we treated them like gold, and we would trade each other floppy, the disc, and it was, oh man, good times. All right,
Invaluable. Priceless.
Ben is ready. Let's bring our next guest on, Ben Goodger from OpenAI to talk about Atlas. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Hey,
Ben.
thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
All right. So I have been using Atlas extensively. I'm really, really excited to talk to you. Let's start with the basics. Why did OpenAI first decide to build your own browser in Atlas?
Yeah, so there's this realization that a bunch of us had that LLMs and ChatGPT in particular have enabled this sort of transformation of the human-computer interface. I think being able to speak in natural language, to be able to chat with an agent, is like an immensely powerful idea. And so when I saw ChatGPT originally, I was thinking, how could I take this with me as I move around the web? And so the core idea of Atlas basically is to have that natural language interaction, to be able to bring ChatGPT with you wherever you go, and help it have it help you do a bunch of cool stuff and be more productive as you use the web.
What are some examples of use cases or usage that you are yourself doing, or that you're seeing users doing, that you think are maybe most valuable, most interesting, or even most surprising?
Yeah, that's so it's been really awesome playing with this for a period of time. I think it's very early days. We're still learning a bunch, but all of us on the team have had, these 10x, 100x moments where we felt the benefit of this thing. Just a couple for me. I go do a lot of online shopping. I'll be looking at, one time I was looking at a pair of shoes on a specific website. I opened the Ask ChatGPT sidebar and I asked if it was the best price. And it went off and ran a web search, and it came back and said, no, actually it was cheaper on this other site. I went to the other site and it was $60 less expensive. And that was pretty head exploding for me to have this thing just like so quickly find that deal. A couple of other use cases like that. It was recently, I had a medical issue, and I was looking at data that was coming through the patient portal. As you know, you get test results and that kind of thing. I was just able to open that sidebar and have it look directly at those test results, which I think is, really helpful. Sometimes, the stuff is written not in like normal English that we can all understand, but medical jargon. And I felt it was super helpful to have it like quickly cut through all of that. And then lastly, really excited about some of the new Agentic capabilities that we're building into this product, where ChatGPT can take over the browser and drive it for you on tasks that you want it to help you with. As I've been looking through feedback that we've been getting, one of the top requests that people have had, for example, are different tab organization, tab groups, stuff like that. I wanted to learn more. So I actually had the agent mode go and build a Google form for me so that I could run a little survey on it. And sometimes I find like actually building the form and getting all of the right controls and so on to be a little bit tricky. But I just gave it the mission and it went off and did it in a few minutes, and I was able to submit it directly from that. So I found that to be super helpful.
And Ben, so you're obviously at the cutting edge of agentic browser usage. So are we. Like, we're trying to figure out ways to use it every single day. But I think for the average person, understanding what use cases are possible, especially when you're allowing the agent to take over for you, it's still pretty opaque. And you're kind of just doing it through trial and error. Do you have any thoughts as to maybe UX, UI improvements to start suggesting like, oh, hey, I saw you do this thing in the past. Did you know our agent can actually do that for you next time you do it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think we're at sort of at the very earliest stages of understanding what this new era for the web looks like, where people can just ask for help with tasks very directly wherever they are. And so at this stage, we are just loving learning about these use cases. I think when we get a better feel, as we get a better feel for the technology, we're going to want to be more helpful and make that magic real for more people that haven't, fully understood yet. We're kind of at the cutting edge, as you point out. We're going to want to come up with new product experiences that make that real, and that's sort of a road, to get there. But it's something that we fully anticipate doing.
And Okay, so Ben, you were at Google and you worked on Chrome. You were one of the leads on that, and now you're building Atlas. And I want you to talk a little bit about Owl, and like what it is, what it actually allows you to do within the Atlas browser.
Yeah, so OWL is the way in which Atlas integrates Chromium. So Atlas is a browser that's built with Chromium. Chromium is a very popular open source browsing framework. Google sort of released it when Chrome was launched many years back, and it is an immensely powerful platform that people can use to make browsers, and a lot of browsers are built on Chromium. It has some advantages around performance and security and broad web compatibility and stuff like that. So if you want to choose a library where stuff just kind of works well, that's a great place to start, which is why we chose it. But we wanted to do it a little bit differently because our product has a few goals. One is to make sure that the app, starts up lightning fast and scales really well as you use it more and more. We find ourselves using the browser a lot, so we wanted to make sure that it was super smooth and solid. We also wanted to make sure that we could build and ship new features quickly. Having worked on Chromium, a few other folks on our team had worked on Chromium. Chromium is a large app; it takes a while to build, so we wanted to make sure that we could, make sure that our team was super productive. And then, lastly, as I mentioned before, we have this agentic browsing feature. We wanted to make sure that we could sort of get in there and structure things the right way to support ChatGPT actually, sending input events to web content and so on. So what we decided to do was to take that Chromium browser and run it in a separate process. If you think back to when Chrome came out, like one of its innovations was to run the individual tabs in isolated processes. With OWL and with Atlas, we're actually taking the entire Chromium browser and running it in a separate process, which gives us a good deal of performance isolation, developer isolation, and sets us up well for the sort of agentic flow.
How does it do that? Can you walk us through the details of how it sets up for the agentic flow?
Yeah, so basically, we have these, we have a model that's capable of driving the browser, and that synthesizes input events, for a specific web content. If you're on a page, like I'll use my example before of a Google form, where it has to go and click on things on the page. And so then it will synthesize, like let's say, move the mouse to this coordinate, X, Y, and click down. And so then we're able to actually create this sort of cross app channel to this OWL world, and then that is able to be sent down into the web page in a very safe way, so that there aren't side effects inside the rest of the browser, and then that's handled by the web content. The web content sees that like it would as if I'd actually clicked my mouse. And then the action is taken by the page because it thinks it's just like a normal input event. And so this structure really helped us do that in a way that to make sure, like I said, that there weren't sort of unintended side effects that would come from that.
So was there a discussion internally about building your own engine from scratch, or is the value proposition of Atlas just so different than the underlying infrastructure of the browser that it wasn't even a consideration?
Yeah, I would say not really a consideration, not really a discussion for us at the beginning, just because we wanted to explore what it would be like to have ChatGPT at the core of the browser and really feel that out. I'd say I've worked on a few browsers. On Chromium, actually, it was a similar story at the very beginning. Chromium itself is derived from WebKit, and so it started from that baseline. So I think a lot of folks building browsers find themselves in this position of thinking about what the differentiation is that they want to offer and focusing on that. Even WebKit comes from, I think, KHTML before that, which was a open source project. So there's this long lineage of open source projects building on each other and focusing in different areas.
Now, Ben, I want to change topics for a second. So you probably have thought a lot about the future of the internet as agents increasingly take over for our browsing behaviors. What do you think some of those first major changes will be? Whether it's how publishers interact with agents, or maybe how publishers actually create content for specifically agents. I'm sure you saw Amazon or AWS kind of sent a legal notice to Perplexity this week saying, hey, don't let your agents buy on your, on humans' behalf. What do you think some of those major changes are going to be over the next 12 months?
Well, we're super excited. With ChatGPT, we've launched this ecosystem project that we launched at Dev Day recently that allows publishers to be very opinionated about how their product shows up, for example, in ChatGPT and provide great value to users there. I think on the web as a whole, that's something that's still very, very nascent. It's something that I think I would like us to think about more. The sidebar, the Ask ChatGPT sidebar, does its sort of best job at trying to extract content from the page so that it can answer the user's question. There's probably a lot of ways in which developers can plug in and make that process easier and or make their site easier to operate for an agent. So I think there's a lot of possibility, a lot of controls, both for users and developers, but still kind of at the earliest stages. I think we need to see how the use cases shape up a bit more before we go and put too many lines in the sand.
And go ahead, Nick, please.
No, mine was completely off topic. So after you.
It just feels like more and more humans are going to be actually browsing the web directly less. Do you think that's going to be the case?
I'm not sure. So I imagine a future in which, it's possible that in the future there will be more web traffic that come from agents than from humans. But I think that humans will still be browsing the web a lot. If I think about what I want my agent to do or my agents to do for me, it's to kind of take away a lot of what I use the word toil, a lot of the sort of nasty stuff, the grunt work maybe. My Google form example, just sort of sitting there clicking around, making sure all of the little buttons were lined up properly. Like if I can offload that to an agent and save myself some time, that's fantastic. But there's still so much stuff that I do online that I want to do. Like I want to, at the end of the day, I want to pick the gift that I'm buying for somebody, or I want to be entertained, or I want to learn about a new topic. These are all things that I still want to do, I think because I need to, or because I want to be, like a better person, or, that type of stuff. So I think people will still browse the web like a huge amount. It's just that there's going to be so much more that becomes possible, and people will be, more effective because of the help that these agents are providing them.
And one more question on this thread. When you look at a product like ChatGPT Pulse, which is hey, I'm going to proactively provide you with compute or inference based on things that I think you're going to need. I'm going to provide you this information. Do you ever see agents being able to kind of proactively go out and accomplish tasks on my behalf while controlling my browser without having me have initiated that interaction?
I mean, that's the dream. I think there's a bunch of steps that we have to go through to get there. Like, I'm so excited about Pulse. I think that's an amazing, amazing experience. I would love to have those type of experiences be possible for people. I think this comes back to, or at least a core conviction of my own, which is, like OpenAI's mission, of course, is to build AGI and make sure it benefits all of humanity. But I see the road to that AGI as running through the browser in some sense. Like, we've built these super powerful models that are really, really smart, can do amazing things. Need to be able to build these capabilities around them, not just to have the brain, but that we also have the skeleton, the muscle structure, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that we can really get great stuff done for you. Like I said, that's the dream, that's the vision. We want to get there. There's a bunch of steps that we have to take. The product, I think I'm really excited about it, but it's really just the first step. And we call agent mode, for example, a research preview. So you get to try it out and you can see how it works, but it's, there's a lot more that we want to do with it.
Yeah. So on that note, whenever teams are releasing a major product like this, there's always trade-offs on the roadmap, right? I'm curious, does anything stand out to you as something that you really wanted to include in this initial release, but might come down the line? Or any sacrifices you had to make just based on bandwidth or other constraints?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we hear about this as well from the user community. We just wanted to get this product out there as soon as possible to hear about how people are going to use this new ChatGPT interaction and these new tools and capabilities that it has. But that did mean that we didn't ship all of the things that we wanted to ship. So one of the things that people, of course, have asked for us is a Windows version, and we're actively working on that. And then, of course, versions for other platforms, in the works too. But even in terms of the core browser, there's a lot of sort of traditional browsing functionality that we want to make better, and some features that we haven't filled yet. One of them is multi-profile. Sometimes people have a work
Oh, yes,
profile and a personal
please.
profile. So that's in development right now. And so there's a bunch of functionality like this that will be coming soon.
Multi-profile would be extremely welcome from our team. That is really cool to hear. Um, okay, so like as you're thinking about enabling, or you kind of said at the beginning, like we felt we had to kind of build this browser to be able to allow agents to control the web. And do you see OpenAI kind of going deeper and maybe even like building an operating system, and like how much of the user interaction layer does OpenAI feel they need to kind of be the front line for?
Well, so the way I kind of look at it is the browser is kind of like an embedded operating system on your device. This is the mindset that I had when we were working on Chrome originally, and I just sort of believe that browsers are kind of like these embedded app environments, app runtimes. And so I'm excited to explore this problem space. I think there's a lot of things that we can do, if we bring this super intelligent agent along with you to help you do things. And yeah, we're going to learn a lot, and we'll figure out sort of what the future of web apps and the web looks like in the process.
And okay, so I think I heard either you say or somebody at OpenAI say you're using Codex so much to deploy features quickly with Atlas. Talk a little bit about that deployment process and pipeline, and how Codex has allowed you to accelerate development of new features.
Yeah, so Codex is amazing. I mean, this is a capability, and this just goes to show the pace of AI development. Just as an aside, we did not have this tool when we started working on this project, which was at the beginning of this year, and it emerged kind of as we were building things. And then you just sort of see this ramp up in speed of our team. And I think on the Atlas team, we have one of our engineers is the number 1 Codex user at the company, just by like volume of like PRs coming out of them, and it's been just super exciting to see what people can do. I think this tool allows everyone on our team to ship. So we have very experienced engineers that are able to wield this tool to be much more productive, to steer it in interesting ways and get it to challenge really, really hard problems. And then there are folks like myself who used to write more code, but now I spend more time in management. But I can still do small changes here and there. So I posted on X. I'd worked on a tab search feature that we thought originally wasn't going to make the cut for the initial launch, but I was able to get that in the last couple of weeks, just on the basis of a few hours work in my evenings. And so I felt like super happy about that, because that's something that a lot of people had wanted.
Can you walk us through that feature?
Yeah, so there's, so browsers tend to have a feature where you can search over your tabs just by typing, part of the title or the web page address or that sort of thing. And so we added a feature like this into Atlas, and there's a keyboard shortcut for it that tends to be used across browsers. It's like Command-Shift-A, and you start typing. And so I just described this feature to Codex, and then it went off and walked it out through our code base, figured out where it should go do all of this. And I had to do a little bit of iteration with it to get the user interaction right, and I had some feedback from our design team and all that kind of stuff. But I tried to, at OpenAI, we have this phrase like feel the AGI. And so I really wanted to lean heavily on Codex through this process. So I tried to, even when we were doing code review, like I tried to pass the code review feedback back to it and see how it would respond. And it did super well. I mean, like I said, there was a little bit of iteration, but really like the from idea to, fully complete feature, it was really just a few hours of actual work, and to me that feels amazing.
The acceleration of software development is insane. You said this, and it kind of, I want to go back to it. You said you started working on Atlas at the beginning of this year.
That's right.
Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
So okay, so from initial, I'm sure like the idea has been formed a while ago, or kind of more than that, but the initial development started at the beginning of this year. Talk a little bit about the major milestones through finally deploying Atlas.
Yeah, so I've been at OpenAI, I guess, almost 18 months, and so last year I'd spent some time working on prototypes, kind of feeling out the space of what we might build if we could do something like this, but then really trying to get together the initial team that would build it. And so at the beginning of this year, we had that. And so then it was time to actually start building the product. And around the middle of the year, we had something that felt more complete. We're able to share it with more of our coworkers, get a lot of feedback, and that kind of thing, which was great, and just sort of iterate a bunch. Through towards the end of summer, we had some, we shared it with friends and got feedback from them, and then obviously we launched, a couple of weeks ago. So that was sort of the roadmap.
It is exceptionally fast. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I think one other thing I wanted to ask about is some of the bottlenecks currently for agentic browsing. It's still like, of course, early preview, and we're still trying to figure out what use cases are best. But what are the bottlenecks you're seeing to really allowing agentic browsing to go mainstream? Is it speed? Is it quality / accuracy of task completion? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm super impressed with how far this problem space has come, like how far our solutions have come since some of the earliest iterations that we did, earlier this year with Operator, with ChatGPT Agent, and now with Atlas. But there's still like a lot more work that we want to do. I would like to see Agent as a capability that is really, really lightning fast, that are super cheap, where there's fewer limits to how much of it you have access to, and then I think most importantly, where people have like a high level of trust that it's going to take the right actions on their behalf. And so these are, that is where. We've got, we're going to set aggressive goals around that. We want to keep pushing forward on it. And I think we've already seen a lot of progress, but there's just a lot more to do.
What actually needs to be accomplished to maybe hit that next level of speed? Is it new models, or is it continued fine tuning of the existing models? Is it the scaffolding? What needs to improve specifically?
Yeah, so there is an engineering component to it, and then there's a research component to it. On the engineering side, it's just sort of continued optimization of our systems and removing bottlenecks and really just focusing in, end to end. It's a pretty complex system, from the Chromium and OWL layer all the way through to sort of our back-end systems. On the server side, there's a lot of different parts to the system, and so just optimizing that whole stack end to end is a really interesting technical challenge. And then on the model side, what I've noticed, through my own use, especially in earlier stages of it, when I would see it struggling in some cases, is that, it's very resilient. It really wants to solve the problem for you. And so it will try something, and then maybe that doesn't work, and then it will try something else. And so that's cool, but it's also latency. And so the more, efficient, accurate we can make the model at solving the problem the first time, the faster the overall runtime will be. So that will continue to be a focus for us.
At the top of the call, we talked about use cases, and a lot of the use cases you mentioned were consumer focused, buying something online. Do you see there being any enterprise specific use cases that immediately come out of Atlas?
Oh yeah, I mean, so if you look at like what a lot of people spend their time doing in work, it is basically synthesizing data from multiple sources and reformulating it and putting it into different places. And there's some amount of that of course requires like your own insight and thought process that goes into that. But there's a lot of that can be aided with ChatGPT, and then with Atlas as your browsing environment, actually made way more efficient. And I think, there's sort of a lot of drudgery that comes with certain types of knowledge work. I think if you've ever had to assemble, status updates from many projects and pull them from all different sets of tracking systems and load them into a spreadsheet, I think we're going to enter a world where, automating a lot of the drudgery in these flows is just like way simpler than it has been in the past. I know people have different tools for that kind of stuff these days, but really want to empower people, empower all workers really to come up with ways to make that work faster so that they can focus on the more creative stuff.
And so last question for you. What are you most excited about on the roadmap besides the Windows release?
Yeah, so just like looking ahead, I'm excited both about personalization. Like the browser has some sort of early stages of personalization. The browsing memories feature is super cool. It helps agent know, for example, that I'm a frequent flyer of United Airlines, so it will go and like look at United Airlines first and help me like find tickets there instead of me having to just tell it all the time. I think that this is an amazing capability that will continue to grow. And I want to see the browser become sort of a dashboard for your life over the course of time and really help you know where to focus. There's so much stuff going on. Like if I need to pay my taxes by this date, I need to go get my docs ready and other stuff. Like I just want it to be able to help me do all of this stuff, as I just sort of move through the world. And I think it can.
Yeah, for me personally, memory, being able to remember things that I've done and proactively kind of suggest, oh, hey, don't forget you need to do this thing. And do you want me to just go do it on your behalf? Like that's really where it becomes insanely valuable beyond what it already is. And my team and I are, we're exploring different use cases every day, trying to figure out some fun use case. One thing I wanted to mention, so we have a researcher on our team, Jonah, and he did a fun little experiment with Agent and Atlas, and he basically did like a secret Santa. So he said, "Hey, Atlas, go buy me something on Amazon. Don't tell me what it is." And it ended up going and buying, I believe, like an OpenAI sticker or something. And I just thought that was so funny. Like, have you
Well,
have you
it was based, I believe, on his ChatGPT chat history.
Huh.
Yeah.
And so he based the purchase on his history, went out and bought a OpenAI piece of swag, which means to me that he's talking about how much he's confessing his love for ChatGPT and OpenAI constantly in his
Yeah,
chat,
and merch in general. He's a big
and
merch
merch
guy.
in general. Yeah.
That's super cool, super interesting to hear. Would love to hear more cases like this. Would yeah, just like hit me up on online, like on social. Love to hear cases or stories like this and share them with folks.
Yeah, Ben, thanks so much for joining us. You can find him at Ben Goodger. We'll also put this in the chat. And of course, try ChatGPT Atlas. Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben. That
Thank you. Great to be.
All right.
was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I am using Atlas as my main driver. I of course like early adopter nature, but I just love testing these things. I'm still trying to find killer use cases for agents taking over. I found a couple, but it's early. You're still trying to figure out what works best. And I really do think a huge unlock for OpenAI would be not proactively having the agent go do things, but just say like, "Hey, we can automate that for you." Just telling me, and I think that's a hard UX problem. Like, how do you actually in the moment where somebody could use automation suggest, "Hey, let me do this for you"? Super interesting. It's both a UX problem and probably a pretty hard computer science problem as well.
Hmm. Yeah. How do you flip the behavior, change the behavior? So you asked a question about limitations. Is this the focus on speed or quality accuracy?
Yeah.
For me, one of the limitations I run into really turning this into like a daily habit is the quality. Like I just want it to work. I'm okay with it being a background process or a background workflow. That's fine. I'm okay waiting for certain things. But if it's not going to be right or there's errors, I give up, right? I'm not going to spend my time trying to fix it. So
Yeah.
that's for me. I'm thinking you're more of a speed maxi though.
Yeah, it seems like this is a trend. I feel like I'm in the minority on this. I typically say I would rather things get done quickly. And especially when you're watching the agent browse on your behalf. And I know I don't have to watch it, but I do. I like watching it. I want to see what it does because that actually informs, it kind of allows me to better understand how to use it in the future. And so yeah, I'm a speed maxi, and it continues from the models, from my agent usage, from my browser usage. I want speed. That's always what it is, and I'm definitely in the minority on that opinion.
The man knows what he likes, and
Yeah.
that's okay. All right. Well, I believe our next guest is here.
Yeah. Speaking of agents, we
Yep.
have
Joao Mora,
Mr. Agent. Yeah.
founder and
So
CEO of Crew AI.
yeah,
Let's bring him on.
yeah. Joao, good to see you.
Hey there. Good to see you.
Hello.
too.
It's been a while, friend. How are you?
Talk about it. It has been forever. So excited. Like two of some of my favorite people ever together on this. This is incredible. I'm very excited for it.
So the history here is Joao and I have worked together at the same company.
Mhm.
And Matt, you and Joao have also worked together in some capacity.
Yeah, I met Joao very early on in his journey at Crew and decided to make an early small investment. And I've been just beyond impressed with Joao's like founderness. I don't know if that's a word, founderness, and just the journey and everything that Crew has done. But Joao, for people watching who aren't familiar with what Crew does, can you just give the breakdown?
Yes, great. And again, very excited to do this. So, yeah, Crew AI, we started as an open source framework. So, very much focusing on helping engineers building these AI agents. And it's weird to say this, but it was back in 23, what is not that long ago, but in AI years, it's kind of feel like forever. So, it was very early days. People were trying to figure out how these things work. And then we transitioned into a company where we're now like helping major enterprises out there building these agents, deploy them, monitor, and mainly orchestrate and manage them. So that's the TLDR.
Yeah, and on your website, you say you work with 60% of Fortune 500 companies.
It
That is an insane figure.
it is insane. I mean, there are some companies out there. I mean, they're huge, but you go into them and there's literally like over 1,500 engineers building with AI in there. And like it's insane. And then you open a map and we have like a map like on where some of them are located and like all over the place, right? You see all over the US, you see Europe, you see APAC. Like it's a little insane. And I gotta say, it has been a blast. And I think there's a lot of like people trying to figure out how these things works and put them together. But then there's things that I actually seen the light of the day and go into production. And I'm very excited for like what the next 1 or 2 years will actually look like.
So
Are-
from 2023 to now, 60% of Fortune 500 is working with Crew AI. Incredible. Congratulations. Do you have a massive sales team, or is it more like engineers are getting in, tinkering, playing with, and then that usage kind of spreads once someone's in it?
Well, so that's interesting. So you think about the open source, on the open source side, there's massive distribution, right? There's people using it all over the place. So on that sense, there's a lot of engineers messing around with that. Now on the commercial side, when we engage with these companies, it's way more kind of like top-down enterprise sales. So we're not necessarily closing a lot of like smaller customers and smaller businesses and like better credit cards start using it. It's usually more engaged on a CIO, a CTO, a CDIO kind of like level and have a conversation about how we build with you, how we get you that business outcome, right? So it started as like, and it's interesting because the market has been changing, right? So I look back at like 2024 and we start to scale a little more aggressively on the sales side on like the tail end. We were seeing kind of like sales cycles taking 150 days. What is our usual for enterprise, right? Now we close these deals in less than 45 days, right? And meanwhile, the deals went from like 5 figures on people like trying to kick the tires to now major 7-figure deals. So it's interesting because we're seeing time to close to go down, ACV to go up, and the adoption is really driving. But no, it's quite a big and like sales team, but nothing huge. We actually use a lot of agents. And
Of
I can
course.
I can tell you some of the use cases in a second.
Please, let's dive into it.
My new favorite use case, and the sales team loves it, is as soon as they hang the phone with a potential customer, I have the transcript. I'm using Fenton most of the day internally. So we have the transcript from Fenton being pushed into a Crew. That Crew does a series of things. First, extract like at least 3 use cases from the call, pick up one, like what is the best use case, and then launch a deep research on all the things. Finds all the different kind of like, what about this use case? What make it good? Then it actually builds it. It loads it into a screen, like dragging the mouse around and record it, and then slap my AI face on it and send it back to my like salesperson. And now they have a video of the CEO of the company, like, hey, we built this use case. So they go from like hanging like the phone in the meeting to 50 minutes later, have a video of the use case with me going over it, and they share that with the prospect.
Incredible. So the 3 use cases are Crew AI specific, how that customer is going to use Crew AI. and then you're doing deep research based on your own functionality, but also probably relating that to the customer, their pain points, their needs, combining all of that, filming the video.
Exactly.
Right?
Because when you think about these use cases, there might be like so many in and outs, right? And the customer like might be like, for example, we see some use cases on oil and gas where they basically have a huge issue with kind of like invoice reconciliation. And again, I'm not an expert on invoice reconciliation. So I actually use these agents to automatically go there and like research everything there's to know about it. So at least the use case that we send as video for them, I don't think they expect the thing to be ready to go. But like if I can send something that in 15 minutes can like speak to their true pain, then that really lands.
Joel,
all right, what else? Let's get some more pointers from Joao.
Well,
I hate to put you on the spot, but we got to learn from you.
I love that. I think like in the end of the day, you look at some of these companies, if you zoom in on the use cases, they'll be a little all over because these companies like they're massive. So they have different integrations, right? You look like we work with, for example, with the biggest brewery in the world, right? It's a major Fortune 500. And they grew their company by doing a lot of acquisitions. So their topology of the data is like completely different. Meanwhile, we have another huge CPG as well. That is a Fortune 500 as well. And you go into them and they actually own most of the chain from like the production to the distribution. So it's way more standardized. So even both might be doing the same use case, it's going to look vastly different. But if you abstract that a little bit away, you start to see some clusters. So overall, the biggest cluster is back office automations, like a lot of doubling down on efficiency gains. Then in there, we're seeing a trend now on this quarter on go-to-market, a lot of automations on go-to-market. A lot of automations start to go into logistics. So like you can think any company that is anything that has distribution on it has a lot to gain from that. And then when you look at the more highly regulated industries, there's a lot of like know your customer, processing paper, OCR, like a lot of things in that realm. So it's interesting, but I would say like support, code-gen, go-to-market, what I'm calling enterprise GPT, kind of like I want to have like a very custom, tailor-made internal GPT that take action. So those are some of them.
All right, Joao, so very related to what you're talking about use cases, Aaron Levy put out a post, CEO of Box.com, Agent Maxi for sure. He put out a post on X yesterday, basically saying 5 years from now, probably 95% of the tokens used by AI agents will be used on tasks that humans never did before. And I find this so fascinating. And you know, a lot of the use cases that you mentioned are automating existing processes, existing tasks. Are you starting to see companies experiment in areas that they just hadn't explored before at all? And I tend to agree with Aaron's sentiment here that as we kind of saturate the use cases of just automating existing processes, companies are going to start realizing, oh, we can get so much more leverage and do things that it was just not even possible before. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, well, I saw that post last night. Aaron is amazing. I actually met him. He sent me a DM out of nowhere a few months ago. And I was like, hey, I'm like 20 minutes away from your office. He's like, yeah, stop by.
Oh, that's cool.
It was so cool. I stopped by their office. And I got to say, it's incredible to see a founder still being in charge of a company that big. Yeah. Like the guy is basically at his house. He's walking around and screaming like, hey, where's whoever else? And opening doors like, can I use this room? It was such a funny experience. And we talked for a while and they're great partners. We're doing a few things together. He's actually coming to a conference in a couple of weeks to give one of the keynotes. I agree with him. But I think there's a few different things in there. One, there is completely novel use cases, right? Things that like, hey, this was not done before in like no way, shape, or form. Then there's use cases that change drastically because you start to notice that a lot of the original process was meant for humans, right? So a crazy example would be if you have agents creating scope for features, so PRDs, and you have agents building the code, there's no need for like Jira, right? Like why would you have like a carding system? So there is that piece. And then the final piece, and that I'm seeing, is companies that are exploring things as a business that they could do with people, but they wouldn't do as a company before, because that would imply a huge investment. And now they're shortcutting with customers. So an example is a telecom, and they basically are like, all right, we have like our telecom business, that's fine. We want to use our data to do credit scoring and money lending. If a company wants to do that, they wanted to hire a bunch of people, right? People that have done this before to understand it. They instead build it up with agents, basically MVP the new revenue line of business and roll it out. And now that it's working, they're like, all right, let's staff it up in a few different ways, but the agents are running most of the process.
How early in this process? Oh,
well, just real quick. You just made a lot of developers happy, maybe, and you didn't even realize, but not having to use Jira anymore. Can you be specific about how that process might change?
Yeah. So the way that, what I mean by that is, again, in the Jira, here's just an example, but if you think about it, the Jira exists for you to keep an inventory so that engineers know what to do, right? But if the agents are running the scope and the agents are running the code, you don't necessarily need that inventory. But if you start looking at other processes in these organizations, what you find out is, again, there's main steps in the process. They're meant just because they assume that the humans will be involved, and you need to have that intermediary state. And you can actually rethink that if you assume, all right, we can automate this process.
Okay, so like as we make this transition to automating existing use cases to kind of exploring new use cases, where are we? Like, how early are we? It feels like a lot of enterprises are still just trying to figure out how to deploy these things, and like, I guess, yeah, where on the spectrum are we, and kind of figuring out new use cases versus just automating existing ones?
I mean, extremely early, right? Like, if you really think about these enterprises, like we're talking about the companies, they're operating at the cutting edge, right? A lot of them, they're like, they have use cases, they might have built a few prototypes, but if anything, they're getting a little blocked into getting into production, right? And it's interesting because you look at the AI agents as an industry. What I think is happening now is there's a race to the bottom to lower the friction for building agents, right? There's so many ways that you can build them. But I think what people doesn't get, especially on bigger companies, is that the bar from the building to deploying and that thing seeing the light of day is huge. And there's so many things that get in the way. And a lot of them are not even AI related, but there are some AI related in there. And I think what people need to get is that the building is not where the value is, right? Building is just the tax that you're paying before you actually get deploying. The ROI only becomes positive after these things are live. So I think there's some of that that is happening, and these companies are trying to figure it out. What are the companies that actually help us get there? And that's where we're slotting in, right? We're slotting in right there with like, hey, we bring you the platform, the playbook, and we build with you.
And you said, okay, so a lot of the friction isn't even AI related. Is it cultural? Is it like the team doesn't want to do it, or they're maybe apprehensive because they aren't sure what the outcome is going to look like? What else is there?
It's a mix, right? I think the main thing, if I could summarize in one single word, is confidence, right? In order for these things to see the light of day, these companies need to be able to move with confidence and trust it. So when you think about it, there is some cultural aspects, but I don't find that to be the main blocker. If anything, most of the people that are pushing things forward, they're excited about it. But there is a lot of security. There is a lot of like data issues. There's a lot of these things that exist within these companies. So like some of them are going to say, all right, this is great. We built this use case. Now we want to roll it out. But how I make sure that this is not exposing us to extra like security concerns, or I'm going to be audited in 6 months. How do I get audit logs on this in a way that I can actually give for whoever is going to be auditing us? So like, these are just some of the examples. And don't get me wrong, there's AI things in there that get in the way, right? A lot of guardrails, a lot of conversations around observability. There's a lot of those things in there as well. But it's not even that. I think it's a byproduct of making things extremely easy to build. There gotta be an understanding that a bunch of these quote unquote concerns that comes later, like security and governance, they need to come all the way to the left as well. like from the get-go, these things need to be secure and need to have governance embedded on them.
And so you probably saw, I think it was just yesterday, Kimi K2 Thinking came out, a really incredible open source, open weights model, really frontier level open source, open weights model, incredibly good at agentic use cases, tool calling within the chain of thought. When you're working with your clients, and like take us through the life cycle of like, hey, we have this initial idea, we want to do some experimentation all the way through deploying agents and which models are powering them. I think my assumption is, and I want you to speak to it, early on when they're experimenting, they're probably just taking off the shelf, just like frontier off the shelf models, paying full price for it or whatever, then as they start to hone in on use cases that work and they're starting to deploy it and scale it up, maybe they're looking for open source models that are faster, more efficient. Like, what are you seeing through that entire deployment process?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think one, there's a few things on the way that the LLMs were adopted that are influencing the models that they use, because the adoption for LLMs were extremely different than the adoption of agents. Like LLMs were adopted on the edges of the organization. Like someone randomly on the marketing team find out an LLM, put a prompt on that, and the thing work, and they love it, right? And that created a few issues for these bigger companies where they're like, well, as soon as that IT pick it up on that, they cut it off, and then like they procure a specific vendor and all that. So a lot of these companies, they have vendors that they have done major agreements with. Maybe it's their hyperscaler and they already have like such a huge bill that they got a lot of credits. So that makes their life extremely easy
Interesting.
to kick these things off with like their partners. So like there are companies in there, some customer of ours that spend $10 million a month with Azure, right? Azure kick back millions of dollars in tokens for them to like using Azure API. So that makes a little bit of no-brainer. They still negotiate a lot on like the non-training on our data kind of like conversations. But once that is nailed down, then they use those models. That said, I do think that fine-tuning is going to make a comeback. In certain regions of the globe, they're more restricted, right? So for example, we work with Korean Telecom, KT, the biggest like telecom company in South Korea, major partner. We're doing a lot of business together in the APAC region. And in Korea, you got to use your local models, right? There's a lot of like pressure to kind of like favor the domestic market in a way. And also makes sense because they can have specific fine tunes for Korean language, culture, and all those things. So that helps them as well. So there are certain constraints sometimes that play a role on the initial model. And some people end up going open source because of that as well. But I'm bullish on fine tuning in small language models for the next couple of years. That's my maybe hot take.
So, Joe, one final question, and then we'll let you go. We just had the head engineer of Atlas on, and we were talking a lot about agents. And whenever we have a conversation with someone who is building on OpenAI or one of the other frontier models, the question of platform risk comes up, right? And when you and I were working at Clearbit, platform risk existed, but it was a totally different kind of platform risk. It feels amplified today. How do you think about OpenAI and Agent Kit and Agent Builder? Are these potential partners for you or potential competitors? How do you think about that ecosystem?
That's such a great question. And I can talk about this for hours, but I'm going to synthesize it.
Yeah.
So one, I think the opportunity here is huge, right? Like look at only the last 50 minutes. We're talking about oil and gas, multiple telecoms, major CPGs. Like this is cross vertical. And within these verticals is cross business units. So I think this speaks volume. And this is where the bullish case for AI agents is. It's like, this is going to eat a lot of software. And that opportunity is so huge that even though I would love people to just let us have it, they won't, right? So there's kind of like I would say four clusters of companies that are going after this opportunity. There's hyperscalers, model providers, incumbents, and startups. I would say those would be the floor clusters. With both hyperscalers and model providers, I got to say, we almost never go head to head with them because most of the enterprises are just saying no. And the two main concerns is vendor locking on both the hyperscalers and the model provider. On the model providers is more straight. It's like if you build any like multi-agent system for real, you know that you use multiple models. Like you can not only rely on one vendor. On the hyperscalers, a little more interesting because a lot of these people, and again, these are people that they're super smart, right? They're running these massive companies. They got burned on the on-prem to cloud migration. Like all the hyperscalers came and say like, hey, it's going to be all unicorn and rainbows. And they doubled down on that. And now they have views that keeps getting higher and higher. And you ask to any of these execs, they all have a 5-year long project migrating to Kubernetes. And it's not even that they want to migrate clouds. They just need a credible threat to negotiate a better deal. So now these people are smart. They're looking at the market like this is moving extremely fast. I don't want to pick any winners right now and find myself like even deeper on this hole. So that's when usually we slot in and you say like, hey, we're open source. You deploy us in any cloud. You connect to any model and you can download all your use cases to your local computer and take that with you. It's your IP. So that's just like slide like a glove and like, all right, this makes sense.
Joao,
Well said.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's a pleasure to chat with you. We're going to drop your X link, Joao Mora, excuse me. And then obviously check out crewai.com. We'll drop both of those in the chat. Joao, good to see you, man.
Thank you so much, folks. Have an amazing Friday.
All right. All right. I think we should kind of just dive right into our next guest.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah. So Jeff Koch, analyst at SemiAnalysis. Very excited. Come on the show, Jeff. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Jeff, is it Koch or Coke?
We say cook actually, but I've heard it a lot of different ways, and I don't really mind. I don't take any offense.
Well, we want to get it right. We want to get it right.
Coke it is.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, well,
Thanks for
welcome to
having
the
me.
show, Jeff. I am super excited to chat with you. I saw SemiAnalysis publish an article, How to Kill Two Monopolies with One Tool, and I immediately reached out to your team and I was like, how do I talk to somebody about this? This is incredible because we are unknowledgeable, to say the least, about this area of AI. So we were really excited to talk to you. Give us like the premise of How to Kill Two Monopolies with One Tool and what it's all about.
Could we actually just back up for just a quick second? I want to learn about you and your role at SemiAnalysis, and then get into the paper.
Sure. Yeah. So SemiAnalysis generally, we're an industry research firm that covers sort of the full AI and semiconductor stack. That's everything from raw materials and chip makers that make the chips up through packaging, through AI accelerators, data centers, into LLMs and the economics of tokens and things like that. And I'm sort of on the far end of that spectrum up in chip making. So that's the equipment, that's the process technology, that's the raw materials that you use to make the chips. So naturally, Substrate's announcement was kind of an exciting thing for us. I guess the basic premise is that they are announcing a tool, or announced a tool that is, at least on paper, very competitive in terms of capability with ASML's latest and greatest lithography tool, which for those unfamiliar, that's sort of the key piece of chip making equipment that limits how good these chips can be, basically how small, how cost efficient, things like that. So for them to come out and say, hey, we have a tool that's just as good as ASML's at 1/10 of the cost, and not only that, but we're trying to also disrupt TSMC by not just building this lithography tool that competes with ASML, but an entire fab and process that competes with TSMC, is exciting, but also bold and right. It's a pretty extreme statement, so it also requires extraordinary evidence. So we haven't really seen a ton of that yet, but I think what we've seen so far is exciting. Um, and it's also really cool to see an American company sort of taking a shot here, right? I think everybody sort of agrees, yes, we need more compute. Yes, it would be great if it was cheaper. But you don't see many people explicitly trying to make it better, right, on the hardware side. A lot of people designing um, chip designs that are still going to be made at TSMC. A lot of startups working on that side of things, but not a lot working on the core manufacturing technology. So for us, that was really cool.
And so their core innovation is something called X-ray lithography. Can you just explain in hopefully the most basic terms what does that actually mean?
Yeah, the simple idea is using X-rays to print patterns on wafers. That's sort of the most important part of the chip making process, right? I want to turn a blank wafer into one that has chips on it. And the most difficult, the most expensive, the most critical step in that whole process is putting patterns that I want, the chip design patterns, onto that wafer. And not just doing it once, but I want to do it over and over and over again, aligned really well. I want to do it as small as I can, and I want to do it really cheaply. Um, so they're basically doing that using X-rays to reflect off of a mask being something that has the chip design pattern
Mhm.
on it, and then that light reflected from the mask goes onto the wafer, where um, you can, through photoresist or other chemical means, basically absorb that pattern.
And
So, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say like there's really one company in the world that is doing this currently, right? And it's ASML. They're kind of the gorilla in the room. Um, like what is the current process? And I know how much these machines are just incredibly pricey. Talk a little bit about what the difference is between the old tech and the new tech in terms of the economics, if it
Sure.
works.
The if it works. Um, you're right that ASML essentially has a monopoly on all advanced lithography. So every advanced chip that's in everything goes through one of ASML's tools. TSMC depends completely on ASML for lithography. In other words, the economy that is really dependent on advanced chips and therefore dependent on TSMC, is dependent on ASML in a big way. So they're really the only company that can do it. Traditionally, they have made things smaller and smaller, the patterns they can print smaller and cheaper by either using larger lenses, which is in the projection optics of the tool. That's not really important, but you can basically make the lens bigger, or you can shrink the wavelength of the light that is reflecting off the mask and going onto the wafer. So ASML uses a certain wavelength that we call EUV, extreme UV, which is 13.5 nanometers, and X-ray lithography basically is a lower wavelength than that. We don't know exactly what substrate is using, but smaller wavelength means I can print smaller things onto the chip. The other important part of this is that ASML's tools are extremely complex. They're one of the most complex single pieces of hardware you can buy. The leading edge ones right now cost something like $400 million, right? It's like the only other maybe comparable thing is an airliner in that same sort of scale and complexity, right? So, um, Substrate is at least is claiming to have sort of disrupted this with a much simpler architecture that enables them to sell their tool for, let's say, 10x less, right? I think $40 million rather than 400 million. We really don't have a lot of details on how they've done that, other than that the tool is quite a bit smaller than ASML's, and um, at least they've shown a couple images that it can indeed uh, print wafers, but still a long way for them to go to prove that this sort of works in high volume.
Have there been other challengers in the last decade that have come up and made bold claims that they can surpass ASML either on cost or accuracy? And in addition to that, why are they so untouchable? Like there's incredible engineering talent, technical talent,
Money.
money around the world, but why do they remain so untouchable?
I guess the first part of your question, we really haven't seen that many people make this claim before, or companies. Canon sort of tried with their nano imprint tool. They said, hey, maybe this is a competitor to EUV, but is really not getting traction for a number of different reasons. Um, but there's really surprisingly few companies that are trying to do this. There's a lot of other lithography startups trying, but not being successful. And a lot of large companies, yeah, they're just not really getting into it. Um, I think a lot of them see ASML as untouchable. To your second question there, they have a huge lead in technology, which I would attribute to one, absolutely their engineering prowess, where ASML has tens of thousands of really talented engineers that are working hard to make this better. And there's sort of a flywheel effect where, ASML dominates the lithography tool market. So they're making tens of billions of dollars a year in revenue, and they can pour some of that back into R&D, way more than anybody else is spending, right? A couple billion in R&D per year at least. Um, and they made sort of a couple big technical bets that paid off. They sort of have a history of doing this since, let's say, 2000. First, they made a big bet on immersion technology, which means putting water between the optics of the tool and the wafer itself, which improves the resolution of the tool. Basically, you can print smaller features, and basically nobody thought that was going to work. You can't overcome all these technical challenges, water on the wafer. It's just insane. And it took them probably a decade of concentrated effort and working at this, but they got it working. And so everybody else at that point was maybe 10 years behind. Nobody else had immersion lithography working. And so that was in sort of the 2010s. And then they made another bet on EUV, similar bet where everyone said, no way, this is going to work. You're going to waste a bunch of money. It just doesn't seem like it's going to go well. And they were able to commercialize it, right? And for the last 6 or 7 years, every advanced chip has used EUV. So it's another sort of 10-year plus technical lead that they were able to achieve sort of just by making a bet and sticking to it.
And okay, so let's go back to Substrate for a second. Can you tell us a little bit about this company? Like, who are the founders? How did they come up with this new process approach? What, like, yeah, like tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, the founder is James Proud, who was a Teal Fellow. He had a couple companies before this, but this is sort of his first foray, along with his co-founder, his brother Oliver, into semiconductors. And at least the way I've heard it from them is that they were interested in this problem and reading a lot about it, and sounds like it kind of made sense for them to finally make it official 2 or 3 years ago. And what seems to have happened is they've hired a lot of really, really sharp technical people out of US national labs, out of Bay Area engineering companies, other semiconductor manufacturing equipment companies, and just sort of set them to this technical task of first of all trying to make a really good, really cheap lithography machine. Um, so other than that, we really don't know much about them. The other sort of uh, unusual thing is that they're being very, very tight-lipped about this technology, presumably because it has so much strategic value to the US, vis-a-vis China trying to produce its own EUV or EUV equivalent technology. So I'm it's really kind of hard. I wish I could give you more details about, sort of what they're doing or anything like that, but it's a relatively small startup that seems to have really genuinely made at least an innovation with their lithography tool. Um, this coming from people who have actually seen the tool work and seen the wafer outputs.
And
So we won't hold you to this, but if you had to make a prediction today, would you say that Substrate is real in their claims?
Oh, I think their claims as far as the imaging capabilities of the tool are mostly true. You can see that from the images they've put out. I think their ability to commercialize it right now is totally unproven, and they have an extremely high and difficult hill to climb before they get there.
So,
Which to their credit, they realize.
right. So if this all does come to fruition, what breaks first? Is it ASML's pricing power or TSMC's how they currently are designing? What
Mhm.
do you think breaks first in the chain?
It's a difficult question because of their go-to-market strategy. They don't want to sell this tool on its own. They don't want to sell their tool to TSMC, tear out all of ASML's tools and use substrates. They want to build their own foundry with it. Right? Like I
Hmm.
said, the ambition is not just lithography tools. It's a whole American foundry that's making advanced wafers at 1/10 of the cost of TSMC, right? Just total moonshot. So presumably if they keep following that strategy, that would be directly a competitor to TSMC. The NVIDIAs and AMDs and Apples of the world would go buy chips from Substrate.
Yeah, I mean that would have massive implications for the geopolitical landscape, right? I mean, it would. What kind of timescales are we talking about here? Like, assuming everything works and they're able to scale up and bring it to market, are we talking about years? Are we talking about like potentially a decade or more?
I think probably more like a decade rather than years. Their sort of ambition is much shorter than that. I mean, they're talking about wafers out in 2028, which I won't say is impossible because the semiconductor industry has a history of making people who say impossible look stupid later. But I think it's certainly very, very difficult. Um, so so I would say, if 10 years from now we said, oh, Substrate is producing chips that are quite a bit cheaper than TSMC, and it took them a decade, that would still be a success.
How do you how do you see the geopolitical landscape playing out? Like, obviously, like we have this huge dependency on Taiwan right now, and that has major implications. And like, if tomorrow we were able to have our own foundry producing our own chips, like what are some of your predictions for geopolitical changes?
If you were the president of the US,
Um, well, it's a huge strategic lever, right? I mean, we all sort of know that, and it seems like the US government realizes that it's not just a national security issue, it's an economic security issue, right? Because there's not just AI chips, which are notionally national security. But if you look at the top 10 companies in the world by market cap, one of them's TSMC, and seven others are American firms that depend almost entirely on TSMC's ability to produce chips, right? So a huge. I mean, it's literally a trillions in revenue at risk if you were to lose access to not just TSMC generally, but one specific cluster of fabs in Taiwan within a square mile. So it's a pretty insane risk concentration. Um, to get rid of that, I think substantially strengthens the U.S. Sort of levers that they have to pull in terms of um, forcing allies or competitors to do what the US wants. We get rid of that sort of economic risk concentration and the national security risk. As far as what would happen to Taiwan in that situation, I'm not sure I have a great idea, but it certainly lessens their position as well if there's a non-TSMC competitor that's truly a competitor, especially in the US. Um, and the other point is that China, I think, certainly will get there. Some of the timelines I've seen people saying, well, it will take China 10, 20 years to replicate EUV. Um, I think that may be a misunderestimation or an underestimation. They're advancing pretty quickly and they're trying really, really hard to replicate EUV or some type of capability like that. And there's a lot of money and a lot of very talented engineers, including ones they brought over from ASML and other places that know how to do this. So I think to say that China won't be able to catch up in, a 5 to 10 year time span is um, is a bit short-sighted. I think they will move pretty quickly. So for us not to have our own sort of um, efforts along the same lines, whether it's TSMC or in the US or Intel in the US or a startup like Substrate, I think is would be really bad, basically.
yeah, I'd imagine it's fairly opaque, but do we know anything specific about China's efforts here? The technology that they're pursuing, the processes they're pursuing, like how they're going about this?
Yeah, there's a few different efforts. There's one that's using a particle accelerator, which would be X-ray lithography, similar to Substrate. It's not clear that their exposure tool works similarly, but the thing that generates the light is pretty much the same idea, right? Particle accelerator, it's a big mile diameter ring that generates X-rays. And so they have that effort. Huawei is trying really hard to basically replicate an EUV tool, and there's a couple others doing similar where it's more focused on the ASML approach, I guess I would say, and trying to sort of replicate that tool or at least using that architecture um, to provide EUV capabilities. And the process technology is the same thing. They're sort of around a 7 nanometer equivalent right now, which is, eight years or so behind what TSMC is shipping. Um, but they obviously would like to have gate all around in 2 nanometers, just like TSMC. So they're spending a lot of money to try to replicate that.
All right. Jeff, thank you so much for joining today. This was fascinating. I really appreciate you kind of letting us pick your brain on substrate and the entire kind of semiconductor landscape. So thank you. Check out Semi Analysis on X. We'll drop that in the chat, and then semianalysis.com. Jeff Koch, thank you very much.
Took us to
Thanks, guys.
school. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. So that's our show. Thanks to our guests, Alex Mashrabov, founder and CEO of Higgsfield, Ben Goodger, head of engineering at OpenAI, Joah Mora, founder and CEO of Crew AI, Jeff Koch, Koch, excuse me, at Semi Analysis. Thanks, Nick, for co-hosting. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Forward Future. Check out our newsletter, forwardfuture.ai, and we will see you next time.